Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of art and popular cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Leonardo Miranda, Miguel Aido,
Oh, hi.
and Tomás Ferreira.
Hey.
As part of our award season segment, we'll be looking at the likely contenders for the 2025 Oscars. Today we talk about Conclave. But before any ados, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply give us a like. Conclave is a 2024 political thriller directed by Edward Berger, based on a 2016 novel by Robert Harris. Starring Ray Fiennes, it follows Cardinal Tomás Lawrence as he organizes a papal conclave to elect a new pope while finding himself investigating secrets and scandals about each candidate. Conclave premiered at the Telluride Film Festival in August 2024, receiving positive reviews from critics, with praise for the performances, directing, screenplay, and cinematography. Among other accolades, it received 6 Golden Globe nominations, winning Best Screenplay. Very well for secretive man of God, all the tea was spilled in that precious conclave of wraith. Nevertheless, was RWC as taken by the drama clergy queens as most critics. Brothers, the Curia is summoned. Do speak up, your eminence.
Insert music.
Okay, yeah. You wanna get to the music? I'll talk about the music.
Let's get our
Spill the
music
tea,
composer
spill the
going on
tea, your
I
eminence.
absolutely detested the music in this film.
Detested. I thought it was good.
Terrible.
I think it's overused. But
I think it's
in terms, I abstain. I'm a lame. I'm a lame man. You're the music composer. Go ahead.
I mean, oh my god, the film annoyed me so much because the music. I'm talking about something very specific.
Yeah.
Because it's so poorly used. It's not even that the music is bad in itself. It's just, especially in like the first half hour. Afterwards, I was kind of like a little less, aware of it. But like in the beginning, it comes in at such poor random moments.
It's so funny at times.
Yeah, it completely
Yeah, this is-
deviates myself from the premise of the film and the
Oh.
tone. The tone. I mean, it becomes like a mystery, fun
Yeah.
to like cartoonish thing, and I'm like, am I not watching like a Conclave, like a serious
We're in the
thing?
Vatican.
I know. I mean, what the hell is
I
going
think
on?
they're aware they're serious. I think they're being over serious with it. They want to emphasize every little moment with the
Oh my
twang of
god.
the violin. And so it becomes over serious. So much so that it becomes funny and defeats the tone they're trying to achieve, which is one of mystery. So who is, you
I
think,
couldn't even find it funny because it was so
you
jarring to
shouldn't find
me.
it funny. You shouldn't find it funny.
No, but in that sort of secondary feeling, I didn't even
Yes,
find it
okay.
funny
Right.
because it was so jarring to me that I just got annoyed. I was like, "Oh my god, this again!" And it was unbearable. And I mean, and it's not even that good. It's just like a couple of instruments, like 3 or 4, mostly violins. It's like I could have done that in 2 days.
Look at him tying his
Please.
tie.
Give me the job.
And then
Give
the
the job.
problem, like not the problem, but then I found out it was like nominated for a Golden Globe or something. I was like, oh my god, seriously? Like so many others, well deserved, especially like the Challenger score, and you'd consider
And
this
it
like to
won.
be worthy of some sort of same level of recognition. Jesus.
They liked the movie, so they're like, give the score too. I like the movie. They
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it really
much
felt
thought
like
into
that.
it.
But the main thing really is the tone. I mean, it seems so different from what we're watching. I really don't know what they were thinking. I mean,
Did you really consider that different from what you were watching? Because it's about intrigue, suspicion. So that's what the
yeah, but it
music
felt a
makes
very
me feel.
it felt a very
For me, it's more the use
cartoonish.
of it. Of course, because it's a question. To me, that comes from a question of use of the music.
Yes,
Because
yes.
it's
No, but the
overused.
main thing for me is the use. When it appears, when it disappears.
The music itself, I think it really sells the emotion of intrigue and suspicion. But the use of it becomes cartoonish, and that's the
But
problem.
but but to me, the film ends up being something more personal and more sort of melancholic thing rather than a
Really?
mystery. Yeah,
Personal? Melancholic?
I mean, once you get into the sort of quails of Lawrence, I mean, the film becomes something else that is not exactly mystery. It's more like an exploration of why what he wants. And since the film keeps dealing with that, I didn't really feel like it's a mystery for sure, but it was a bit heavier to me than that. It was for me it was more like a drama, like a normal drama. And the music didn't really go into that direction at all. It felt very thrillery, mysterious, and
That's
in a very
interesting.
simplistic way. I mean, I didn't
Okay.
really,
Because
even
to
for
me,
mystery, it's not a really interesting score.
the thing was, to me, it always remained until the end a mystery, and its attempts at making a personal story, because we do understand that he's having a crisis of faith. He doesn't necessarily want to be dean. He wants to go to an order. He has all that. I think those are all just attempts, and I never feel that becomes personal. It's very meek. Even the final shot with him, I thought shouldn't have been the final shot. I think it's like, why are we seeing this? This is a bad way to end the movie. The final shot would have been when he is in that patio with the turtle. He looks up, the cloud receives the Pope, and that would be a great end shot, because it's not about who the Pope is, just about his presence, not about the physical appearance of the Pope, whether man or woman. This he's a symbol. That would, then when we cut to him by the end in his room and the nuns coming out, and I thought, what's the meaning of this? I don't know. These attempts at making it personal, and the crisis of faith that I
But
never
you
feel
say
like it
attempt,
gets. Yeah, it
but you
never
say
concludes.
no, but I think part of it's not so entirely, but it is motivated by the music because when you really look at the film in a cold manner, it of course it's a mystery because the whole thing is driven
First and
by
foremost,
yes, the whole thing is driven by who what are these secrets of this Tremblay cardinal and
who
then
is
everything
worthy
else.
of being a pope, an
Yes,
example
exactly.
of the
But
church,
but
so to
that's
speak.
but that's but that question is relevant because in answering that you find that it can become very personal on on Lawrence's side, and that to me was that was far more interesting than a sort of than making it a mystery. I mean, like in terms of a genre, like of course it's a
Oh,
mystery,
of
the
course, I
premise,
agree with
but
that.
I wouldn't
Definitely, yeah.
agree that the film should be like a mystery genre, and the score goes in that direction, and that's why I didn't like it because visually I felt a lot more than the score gave.
I think that I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that the film, to a degree, knows that that's where its most powerful element lies, is to have in this mission of finding a pope, which is a political thing, a thing of structure, of management, so to speak. There's something very personal about, is there any hope for the church as an institution, this centuries old institution, to reform and become better, and not rely on tradition? And that is really tied up with the personal journey of crisis of faith, more in institution than in God, I presume. Although his crisis is more binded with God, I presume. I don't know how that solves it. He seems to, there's this distinction, which is, it's different. And nonetheless, where at one point in the film, it's clear that he has a crisis of faith in God. The previous pope had the crisis of faith in the church institution itself. I don't know if his crisis with God itself is solved. That never is answered. If he's having a crisis, because that's an entirely different question. I mean, I think his faith in what he represents in the institution is comforted and solved through electing this man who we can feel is the right man for the job. But his crisis of faith has that very personal side of him. I don't feel he wants answered. And the film, it focuses very much on the intrigue, on the mystery in terms of tone. It hints at the personal, but I don't think the personal, particularly because of the crisis of faith with God, is ever answered. Because that's a big thing. I mean, it's not the same thing as crisis in the institution, which we see being solved. But of God, which is a big question. I mean, do you believe or you don't believe in God as a man of the
But
clergy?
But I don't think it ever really was a matter of belief in God because progressively you can see that it has to do with his ambitions and what the previous pope had told him he should do, and then we learn that it that conflicts a bit with what he actually wanted to do. So I think him saying that it's a faith of God, it's a bit to do with the fact that of the choice that he wanted to make, and so what he feels like he should do that perhaps feels like being overly ambitious, and in that sense, going against God or going against his faith.
But do you think he was ambitious?
I mean,
Because I don't think he was ambitious.
It's that sort of ambition where you recognize that you might be good for the role, but since it's that role of being the Pope, y- you also have to judge whether or not you are the right person for it. I mean, it's like they say at a certain point, they all want every person eventually thinks that they want to be Pope and considers it. And I mean, I think that's normal.
Oh, I think that's
Being
normal. I
that
just
they're
think
cardinals,
I don't
it's
think he
something
ever shows
perfectly.
that ambition particular. I think that's normal, but I think
Oh
it's
no,
also
no,
normal to not
no, he
have that.
does.
No, he doesn't. The film trying to drive that, but I don't see that happening.
No,
I think I see
because
the
it's
machinations
hinted
of the film. Yeah,
because it's hinted that the main thing that drove him away from wanting it was what the previous pope had told him about what he should do and his role in the church would be. And I think that's the main thing that drove a question into what he should do in the future.
let me get this straight. In your rationality, what you're telling me is that he wants to be pope. You know, in your rationality, not in your irrationality.
Let
But
me
also,
see if I
let's go with
understand
that.
this.
Let's go with that. In your irrationality, you know,
Your
what do you
utter
mean?
stupidity.
You know,
You believe.
you believe. So let me get this straight. You're telling me then that he wants to be pope. There's that ambition in him, but the previous pope, his friend says, no, you're good as a manager. You manage the farm. But it is clear that that wasn't the
I'm
discussion.
not.
He wanted
I'm
to
not.
be more of an order, a more humble beginning, you know, on the ground with the believers,
You
not a
can't.
manager.
You
I
can't
think you're
ignore
trying
the
to force that
fact.
idea
No,
of
no, no, no,
the
no. You can't ignore the
Pope.
fact that throughout the film, there's the question raised about what Lawrence actually wants to do. And I think that comes from the fact that as every cardinal there, as they then hint at a certain conversation, they all have natural inclinations towards the papal role. I mean, it's not necessarily an ambition, more like, okay, I'm there, I'm at this
Of
point.
course, I
It's
understand that.
perfectly
Yeah.
normal to consider being more. And I mean, it's not necessarily being overly ambitious, it's just something that comes with the territory, so to speak. And I think that part got conflicted with the fact that then the previous pope clearly, um, drove him towards another place, another sort of role within the church. And I think that's the interesting part of his character is understanding where he's going and what he wants. Without ever really wanting to seem ambitious, because he's not an ambitious person at heart. He seems perfectly like decent and humble, but again, just because you're humble doesn't mean that you can't want something like the papacy with perfectly like honest morals and virtues and so yeah, for me that's the interesting part of his character, and I think that's definitely explored throughout. That is having these doubts. You can call them ambitions, because okay, yes, in a literal manner it is an ambition to want to be pope, but I think it goes a bit beyond that, because you can see that his character doesn't want it the way Tremblay wants it or the way Adeyemi wants it. So
Yeah, I didn't get that personally. I
Yeah.
thought
No,
he,
no,
he
no.
didn't want to roll. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, but there is the moment
I
where he
think.
does say
Yeah.
what his name as a pope would be. He does say John, right? I guess
Yeah. But
it
I
he,
feel
shows
he
that
that
he
sa- he
did
to
puts
me
think.
that
his own
felt
name.
fake. It's
He
like the
puts his
plot
own
forcing
name. You
something.
guys are forgetting that scene. He puts at some point he puts his own name, like one of the final votes.
But that is part of the machinations of the evil side, the extremist side of the right side, the non-liberal
No, no, no,
side
no,
of
no.
Tedesco is winning, and we are losing our best candidates, and we need to choose what is our
But at
best
that
choice.
point, it hadn't been decided that it should be for Lawrence. It was decided it should be for Tremblay, and then he put
Of course
himself.
not. But then Tremblay is put on the spot and disqualified. Because the film identifies these main figures: Adayeme, Tremblay, Benini. Each of them, of course, not Lawrence, because Lawrence is the last one of the list or not on the list. And very effectively so. He never is the first or the second or the third, because we are investigating as the plot progresses what are the monsters in the cupboards of these clergymen who are the people who effectively want it. So only at the end we're going to consider Lawrence, because of course he is the protagonist. We need to consider him. He is a good man. He is the manager. So at some point he may be considered, but it will be at the very end. So structurally I understood it. But I feel it's a bit the machination of the plot wanting me to go there. I don't think he has
But you don't
ambition to
feel
be
at
Pope
all that
at
he
all.
at some point he
I
wants it.
think I honestly think it's a bit like your own interpretation into the
Oh
narrative
no, no, no,
that
no,
the
no, no.
Pope talked to him that
I have to
because you don't want
completely
to be
disagree.
Pope, because you don't want to be Pope, Lawrence, you will be a manager. No, that doesn't happen in the film. That's not something shown in the film. That's not even hinted at
No,
in the
no, but
film.
I don't think he ever says to the previous pope that he wants to be pope at all. I just think that he has his own plans and he has his own will and ambitions, and then that conflicts with what the previous pope says that he should do. And let's not forget that he was the previous pope. It's someone that he clearly
Okay,
respects.
but what are
And I
his
think that's
ambitions
the I don't know
specifically?
I don't know
What's
exactly what
there?
is
What's on the film?
listen, there are cardinals in the sort of pot that clearly have that ambition, like Tremblay and Adeyemi. And then there are guys like Lawrence, which I think have the ambition, but are more humble about it. They want it for, you know, moral reasons. They want it to be decent people and to do good. And I think that's a different type of ambition, but nonetheless an ambition to want to be Pope.
For example, Benini or Aldo, I don't remember his name very well.
Bellini.
Is Bellini is he's kind of like Lawrence as well. He's a man with good intentions, and he remains so to the very end. He's only succumbs because he does not have courage, because he tries to work within the system instead of being focused on becoming a man of good, which he is in essence. He becomes focused on the politics of it and the game of it. Who can we have has the least bad of the bad options within our team, so to speak, and he loses his north. But if he were to become pope, he wouldn't be bad either. You know, he's kind of he has shown to have good beliefs. So I don't know. I know Lawrence is not the only one who is like this benevolent figure.
No, no, for sure. I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I
But
just
that
find a
doesn't.
little bit difficult. I guess it's your interpretation, but I just find it a little bit difficult to really see ambition. Where for the most part, I hear from other characters saying that he has ambition, but
Yeah,
I'm not convinced.
you're taking the word ambition with a very sort of negative side. When what I mean is, like any person there, they
No,
wouldn't
no, no,
mind
no.
being
Not a
Pope.
negative side. Just ambition in this ambition purely in the sense that you want to elevate to a higher position. That's what ambition is, at least in
Yes,
this
but
context
in
of
that case, I don't
he has
deny
never
that.
shown the ambition for a higher role.
I think he does. I think in small instances and in conversations, it is hinted. At least he doesn't fully deny it. It's not something, but it's a bit more complex because there are moments where he clearly struggles with what he's saying. And why else bring the whole thing about what he wanted to do and the role of the previous pope in guiding his career? I mean, that's the crisis that he's talking about, the crisis in God. It's and exactly what the Pope told him he should do versus what he wants. Otherwise, it's where's the conflict then? What do you think his conflict is, if not that? That's what I asked him.
To me it's like he wants to, his ambition is not up, is down. He wants to be with the people. He wants to be in the order, closer to the believers. He's not dreaming of that, you know. He wants to get away
But
at
that's what the
least
previous Pope told him he
at
should
the
do.
very
He should
no, no, no,
manage.
no. That's no, no,
He
no, no,
should
no, 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 no.
be
That's not
like.
what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I just said was what he wants is to go to an order outside of the papacy, the high and mighty power of Rome, of the Vatican. He wants to go to an order outside of it, okay? Like the Franciscan order or Dominican order, out of this high ordained job. You know, that's what it is. That's his ambition, is where he lies. Because at the very least, what I can admit, it's not he's confused about this crisis. It's actually not a crisis in God, it's a crisis with faith in the church. You know, that's what a conversation with Bellini may be. You know, you may actually be experiencing a crisis in the faith of the church, which at least makes the ending more fulfilling in terms of his arc. He reunites with his faith in the church by electing someone. Because if it is faith in God, I don't see how that gets an answer by the end. Or not necessarily doesn't need an answer, but some kind of through line. You know, we don't know by the end, does he still believe in God or not? So I don't know if that was the question necessarily. But surely if he was faith in the church, that is resolved. That has come to an end.
The fact that they talk about the faith in God makes the assumption that it has something to do with what he wants to do versus what he feels like he needs or he's being guided towards doing, and that becomes a conflict in the
So what he
sense
wants to
that
do is order
no, but
or
let me finish
being a
because
manager.
no, but let me
Yes.
finish because I think these are two different things, and that's exactly why there's a conflict. I mean, that's I mean, I think he wants to be something else, at least in part, or at least he doesn't fully deny in himself that he wants it. And that's why there's a conflict, because things are not as simple as that. And it's not as simple as it's just wanting to go to some whatever order. No, he
Sure,
wants
and that's
something
what makes
else
storytelling
different.
interesting. Of course, I just don't think that the film really, much like the question of in the substance there being a cross of consciousness that is clear, not obvious but clear. Here, I don't see that ambition being delineated in a clear way.
Maybe we're talking about
Do you ever
slight
see him in his alone time?
misinterpretations of the word ambition, but at least to me, what I think Lawrence is doing
What
is,
is ambition then in this case, in this scenario?
for me, it's like there's a difference between not like refusing something and being capable of accepting the decision if it comes to it. And that's what I believe Lawrence is in this realm of, okay, if it comes to it, I can do it. Because there could be, some other cardinal that says, I completely refuse this. I cannot do this. And I think in his interior, Lawrence would be able to say, yes, I can do this if it come to it. And that's the interesting part of it, is that even though he has this, this wanting to do something else a bit different in his insides, is capable of accepting the role if it's thrust upon them. And I think that's the interesting part, and that's the conflict.
I understand that. That makes sense. I get it. I just don't think he has such a weight that is part of his personal struggle. But I understand it. Because automatically, when you are a cardinal, you have that thing hanging in the balance. You may or may not become pope, as your colleagues are also have the name on the table. Is that a something of weight that worries him in his consciousness? I think if the time comes, if selected, I agree with you. He has confidence in himself enough. If other people support him and believe in him as well, which is shown at the end with his friend, giving him the moment and saying, what name do you want? He will take the chance. Do I think it's part of his ambition? Even if dormant, I don't know if it's, I think all of them can say, if put on the spot, yes, I will. Because that's the position of being a cardinal. You may or may not become pope. You're putting yourself to the test when you become a cardinal.
That moment where he puts his name again, it's not what they had decided. I mean, we
That's
have
true.
like sort of a
But it's not
moment where
ambition.
we don't know where he's going to choose, and he chooses himself. And that's a clear moment where it's not that it's putting himself because it's what the group wanted for the greater good. There's a clear decision there of going against what his friends wanted. So I think that's a very important moment because it clearly
Of
hints
putting
something
himself as
else.
the name. Putting
Yes.
himself as the name against his friends?
Yes, you
No,
go
by
watch
that
it
time,
again.
by
There's a
that.
mo It's hinted that he is going to choose someone else, and then he puts himself, and that's
No,
a
no, no. By that time, Aldo is also going to put in Lawrence. His numbers are up in the
no, no,
game.
no, 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 no. That's a different
Who else
scene.
are they? Who? What? Who?
I don't
That's
I
what.
don't listen. I don't remember the actual ones going against each other, but I know I remember that in that scene there was a conflict because we didn't know who's gonna choose, and he chooses himself.
I'm watching the scene before he chooses himself, and it's him and Aldo talking um, near that lion statue, and
Yes.
Aldo tells him, "This is between you, Lawrence, and Tedesco." I mean, he gives him
Yes, exactly. It's Tedesco.
So
in very
his
clear,
team is
but
completely
Tedesco
with
is the
him.
traditionalist, is the
Uh
conservative
huh.
guy.
Uh huh.
So it's between
Ah, no, no,
a
no. Tedesco is the
progressive.
Italian.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Tedesco is the
Ah,
Italian
no,
guy.
no.
So his friends are not voting against him; they're voting with him, for him.
Are you sure that's a scene before he votes himself?
Yeah,
I
I
know.
just watched, unless he votes for himself again, but I just watched it. Lawrence, I'm watching it, and then just behind, it's 1 hour and 32 minutes in that he votes for
Lighting the
himself now.
match,
And
putting gasoline on Mike, flick it.
and Aldo tells him, it's,
Burn,
yeah,
baby, burn, burn.
Way to win
Burn,
with
baby,
grace.
burn. Black smoke rising. You're defeated. Woo.
even it's that moment he says, like, it's time that you choose the name you wish to be known as Pope. Aldo tells him as well.
Twang.
Well,
I
okay, I
love
have
my
to
twang
rewatch
right
it
now.
because I had such a different idea of
Equally
that
watch
scene.
it.
I still think it shouldn't be summed up to this decision itself because for me, what I was saying is still there throughout the film. Just for example, on this fight alone to get justice on the dirt of everyone. I mean, there's a clear indication that even if he's not aware of it, in doing this process in such a thorough way, he ends up putting all the attention on himself. And at a certain point, it is hinted that in doing that, he's becoming the more prospectful
Well, of
potential
course,
candidate.
that doesn't necessarily mean that it comes that effect comes out of his will. It's just something that comes out of him doing his job right. Because as he says, okay, you're a manager, manage.
But the conflict is still there. I mean, he knows what he's doing, and
I'm just
again,
saying
that's what I
that
say.
all this work.
Is able to accept it if it comes to it, because in doing the job well, I mean, he has to face the fact eventually the decision can come to himself, and
Okay,
that's the
yeah,
conflict
fine.
because the
Yes, I
ambition.
understand that.
Yeah, well, okay, then.
Does it translate into him having that ambition? I don't agree with that side of
Maybe
things, but
not.
I agree
But no,
that.
he does behave like the
Oh yeah,
perfect
he
person
does, of course.
for the Pope. So
But
it's
that's
like,
another
okay,
thing. That's a matter of personality. Like he is generally seems to be a virtuous man, a good person who wants to find out what is right, what is wrong, what is the best course of action. A manager, and through that work, he becomes aware that,
but
oh
he
yeah,
could
I
not be
could
so
if
good.
given the
If he really
opportunity.
doesn't want it, he could be less good at his job to fulfill him not wanting to be Pope. You understand?
Yeah, he could do
And I
that,
mean,
but
and for
I
example,
don't
the
I
last
don't know if
guy,
he's I don't know if he's even
think
thinking that.
about
I'm
the
going to
last guy
yeah.
that
What?
gets actually nominated. I mean,
Uh-huh.
he says yes. I mean, in a perfect scenario, he would say no because he's so humbled, because he's such a perfect candidate that he has to say no because he truly doesn't want it.
They
But
would never choose a Pope ever.
yeah, exactly. There always has to
Yeah.
be a concession. The perfect guy is flawed and in some capacity wants it, even if it's in a very small way and for good intention. But the last person always needs to say yes. And that ambition is what I'm trying to say,
But
is that the person is capable of accepting the role, even
I
if
think
inside it's not exactly something that they want to do.
to leave the plates clean on this, to put one thing clear.
Such
Okay.
we know nothing about popes and cardinals.
Exactly. Here I am with my
Let's
Yeah,
make this
little
clear.
vent shed, yeah. To make one thing clear, one thing is to understand you are a good man and you're good enough that when the opportunity rises up to you, you would accept the role. And the other thing is to say that you have ambition. I think through the nature of all the work that he's done to find the right guy, to reveal the ones that don't deserve it, and eventually become aware that, yes, well, I could take the job. Of course, I understand that. I understand all that side of the argument. I don't think that translates into him having the ambition. I don't call that ambition. I call like a decision needs to be made, common sense. I have done all this. I think I have the confidence. I have the confidence to do this. I could do this well. Because so
but
many people
that's
believe me
okay.
Now.
But that's what I'm trying to say. I
But
mean,
that's not
we can
ambition.
frame it in.
That's not, it's different.
But ambition is like the
Because
wanting.
ambition is a big word in this claim of this movie, and he
Okay,
does not
sure.
have ambition. Because if you're a cardinal, of course, I mean, if you don't want to
He doesn't
become
have
pope, don't
ambition
become a
compared to
cardinal.
Tremblay, sure, or Adeyemi. I mean, I agree with
Exactly,
that.
but that's the kind of ambition that is being discussed
Okay,
here.
but then it's just about being relativistic, because again, it's like if you're capable of putting yourself in a position where you get the role and you say yes, then you have ambition.
I don't think that's the same thing. I don't think that's necessarily the same
I
thing.
mean, he has to know what he's getting himself into when he sort of leads this conclave, because in itself it's a position of great responsibility. So he must know how he's being looked at.
But the thing with which is so complicated with this film is that the word ambition, as it comes up in the mouth of these people in this film, is one much connected with a greediness. You know, that Tremblay shows, that Tedesco shows, a mean-spirited one that is in trying to achieve power most of all. And then the acts of goodness that comes with being a pope are, we don't know how some would perform. I'm particularly sure that Tedesco wouldn't be a great candidate at that, but maybe Tremblay would be okay, you know, with a mix of bad shit on the side and, selling positions and whatnot for money, like he's accused of. But because the word ambition is so connected to the bad side of it, of what it means in this film,
I mean, sure,
to what
okay,
all,
we can
because
call it
a
something
lot of
else.
men are put in that bag of ambition. Tremblay, Tedesco, Adeyemi, and they've all done serious shit, and they all connected. And so when you have several characters connected to one single idea of ambition in the film, and one that is negative, it crushes every other notion. So it's confusing to speak of, ambition for other people when, I guess it's for this particular film. But yeah, I guess, he has ambition when called for. Uh, mhm. But what do you think of the film in terms of its plot and its structure? I think it's a solid film. I think it's a good watch overall. It has its yeah, it achieves the assignment. It doesn't surprise me or anything. I don't think it goes beyond the premise. It's like sure, it's good and it's all good performances. I'm attracted by the performances of Ralph Fiennes and of course Stanley Tucci and whatnot. I really like Tedesco as well. He has such a beard and
The vaping.
and hair. Yeah, the vaping as well. But yeah, and that in the particular scene that I really like that gives some humanity to the film because it can be a very plot heavy film, plot driven. With people telling stuff to other people. I always find funny when that secretary kind of clergyman that goes up to Ralph Fiennes telling him stuff is always like always bring news, but then he's always like but I have
But if
to
I may
say
say,
one
I
more.
may
It's like
say,
Columbo. One more
one more
thing,
thing.
like he did screw with the sister. Oh my god, I can't believe it
That was
again.
what I was gonna say. I think the film is solid, but sometimes it's a bit like a bit pulpy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you can't help but being a bit melodramatic, a bit sort of soap opera. It's not entirely, I'm not saying it is, but
It's like a
it
video
can't
clip at
help but
times.
create little twists and like feed on these little twists and pulling a leg on the audience. And sometimes I feel like it's a bit too much. And also because sometimes the dialogues, or if not dialogue, sometimes even monologues, like Lawrence in his homily, sometimes it's a bit preachy.
Well, I
Oh, why'd
cannot
you think that?
use this specifically in that moment where the point is to preach. I cannot. I wouldn't have the same
But
opinion.
no,
But
but
okay.
in a sense that sometimes it's a bit on the nose on the themes and well, yeah, of course it's preachy, but I mean, but in that sense that we know that it's the synonym is more like on the nose and
I get what I mean. I wouldn't point that as an example. That one scene I wouldn't because there are, especially when you're dealing with writing um, homilies and stuff like that, things can get pretty obvious. And you know, having had some experience in writing that, things get pretty obvious because the allegories are meant, to breed those ideas of sin and virtue, of heaven and hell, of death and what's right and what's wrong. Doubt. You speak it with cleareth. It's there. So it's a little bit impossible not to be that because, and there I have to excuse it. If it is in dialogue scenes where it's not a homily, it's not meant to be preachy. If you were to point at the moment there was more obvious for you than it should have been, I would understand it more. There, I excuse it more because that's the nature of
I mean, yeah, okay, maybe that's not a great example, but for example, that scene with Isabella Rossellini where she says like, God gave us nonetheless eyes and ears, even though we are kind of silent here. It's like, and then she says that and she says, I mean, her character is so like, okay, she's here, she's walking around, she aids that sort of other nun that comes from wherever, and then she has that scene, God gave us eyes and ears, he did it. That's it. That's her. And then
yeah.
she
I
walks
felt I
away,
felt a little
He
bit
didn't do
mean.
much. Yeah.
Yeah,
and her
no, this
character is
was
like that,
that was that was interesting because the whole scene was like
He did it. Okay, bye.
Lawrence is already giving a lot of arguments against Tremblay. Nobody's believing. Somehow, when she comes in and says basically the same stuff, with no like physical proof, it's like, oh, okay, so I guess that he's really the shit. I was like, what? What did she add to the conversation? I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just
kind
like,
of. But to me, it
yeah,
felt more like an excuse to say that line, which was interesting, but again, felt a bit like pulpy and flashy. And then
because it
she
comes
just
from a
exits. She
character.
says, "Okay, yeah, he did it. Bye."
Yeah,
And her
exactly.
character does really nothing else in the entire film.
I think she's very misused. I think she's very underused, and she's kind of there to make smirks and to be seen in that position where I get it. The women are not in prominent positions, which is an interesting theme in the film, but I just don't think she's used enough. And she seemed to have. I was hoping she had more of a prominent role. With Isabella Rossellini seen in the show, and she's very quiet. And then the whole thing with the nun that Tremblay, you know, uh, asked to come from Africa there to the Vatican. I'm like, that happened 30 years ago, and she's not going to reveal the name of the baby boy to the world or to the press or whatever for shame or the stress of the boy. So if that happened 30 years ago, what is exactly she's doing there? Isn't that solved in her hearts of hearts, that thing that happened 30 years ago? What is she telling to Adayem in that canteen? Oh my God, you did that thing to me 30. Sorry, I imagine that discussion you already had that scandal like 30 years ago. And you saw, so what exactly you asked? Like, I just imagine how that conversation went. Tremblay said, "Oh, sister, what have you from Congo or whatever? I don't know. come here and let's see what happens. I'm just gonna put her hair in this. What if she didn't say anything? I just imagine like she was just there eating her stuff, and then
Fuck.
Tremblay would go.
Damn it.
Exactly.
Hey, you two
And
guys, don't
Tremblay
you know
would
each
go.
other?
Exactly.
Didn't you two
You know,
fuck?
what guarantees that she's gonna have like bitterness? Where she's going to go to her like poking
It
to her
was a
like, come
gamble. It paid
on,
off. It was a
come
gamble.
on.
It
Like
worked.
by chance she was annoyed still, but like I'm whole like it seems a little that was 30 years ago, and just I don't know. It just felt like a little far fetched. When you start thinking about it, how it would work, relying on the character, still having
Yeah.
resentment for him.
Tremblay is talking to her. These are the people who are gonna be there. Bellini,
Exactly.
Adeyemi, Lawrence.
You remember? Here's a
Exactly.
photo.
Exactly.
But before we saw the film, Tomas, you had mentioned like a shot that you thought we wouldn't like, you know?
Yeah, no, this goes back to something I briefly mentioned here before going on another tangent, but the film has also a very video clippy vibe where the editing of transitions between scenes prioritizes music over what is being said through the images, and so it becomes a montage sequence frequently, which I think takes the value of the scenes dramatically, even of transitions. Because transitions itself, when you make montage sequences, I like when they have an overall through line or construction of an idea. When Martin Scorsese constructs montage sequences, you always feel the spillover of beautiful ideas contradicting themselves, and it's still action, and what are the characters about. Here you have, like, for example, the Conclave starting to reunite, then you have this dun 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 dun, and then you see cigarettes on the floor, a cardinal with a phone, all these contradictory, contrasty images. They feel very. It's like I'm looking at pop art. It's like that is seeking shock value, like which granted when I saw it, I thought, oh, a cardinal with a pope, that's interesting, and it had that reaction. But it feels too in your face, like, and then you see a cardinal looking directly at the camera, like it's one of those photos of kids on the streets, like, oh my God, see the pain in his eyes. It's in black and white, and it's just a pope like there. There's one counting the beads, and it's these little minute things, and it just feels very. I don't know, it just sucked the value of the film for a moment. It's just more like, oh, the seriousness. And the one particular shot I didn't like that feels like this to say that he seems to fall on the line of those directors who shoots coverage on the spot, and then on the edit he figures out the film. He's not thinking in terms of the editing. And for example, he just looks around like Ridley Scott. That's good. Camera A there, camera B there. And then for example, there's a shot of a candelabra. From the worst position you can shoot a candelabra, which is a very brief shot, like I saw it on the theater, and this is wide big. This becomes even worse when you see like on a big screen. I'm like, what's he doesn't think of shots as a unit of meaning, more in a complot, like this series of sequences of images to create a moment that doesn't really mean anything beyond its literal action. Cardinals entering a building. Dun 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 dun, beats. Smoking. Oh my God. Sin, but it doesn't carry meaning. Every shot doesn't carry meaning, which what I prefer, or constructing phrase, a phrase being constructed. That one of the candelabra, instead of filming him from the side or whatever, he shoots it from the bottom. So for a while you are trying to figure out what is this I'm looking at. Oh, it's a candelabra, but it's kind of obscured because the light comes from above, so the bottom half it's kind of in dark, and it's this kind of spider webby thing, and it's like, this is so ugly. What does this mean? He just looked at it and thought, funny, sumptuousness and stuff. Okay, shoot, a rich building. Oh, good. That's what I'm thinking. He's thinking. I'm like, it's so like it's just empty, and I'm like, what an ugly shot. I just thought it was so. A misdirection, I'm particularly a fan of that kind of directing without notion of constructing something where each shot has meaning, each shot has weight, and constructs an overall greater sentence.
Yeah, I think I have another example of that because in the beginning, we don't really see Lawrence's face, like when he's walking in the street towards the conclave, towards the conclave, towards the sort of rooms where the Pope has died. And so, it builds a certain mystery. You don't really know what it is. But okay, let's keep this going. And then just like two shots afterwards, you have the blandest shot of this room, and Lawrence just comes in like face to the camera. And that's it. That's the reveal. It's just a bland shot of him entering the room, and you're like, why were we hiding his face in the beginning to just reveal in the most normal way possible? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
what was
yeah.
the point of all that then?
Because I don't think he was thinking of, oh, we're hiding the. It's just, oh, it's a cool shot to frame it. It's dynamic. It's whatever. Because it's very TV shit. It's very TV.
Yeah, it's the visual
Yeah.
device of it. It's just it's gratuitous, it's stylistically interesting. It's gratuitous. It's gratuitous. It's like
But
let's not reveal the
insignificant
face until we reveal it.
to the film because his identity is like it doesn't really matter. It's not a mystery who he is. It's going to be something else. Yeah, I thought the visual construction of the film really just not good. It's like each individual shot, fine, yeah, it's good light, I guess, whatever, well framed, but the connection between images and even just the simple things like framing a conversation, it's usually just the blandest, most boring decisions. Oh, there's a wide shot, and then someone says something significant, close shot, and then cut to the reaction, and then that's it. And then someone says something even more significant, even closer shot, and then in the scene, music, cut to the other scene, and always, and it's just
Yeah, yeah,
you are
yeah.
in this space, this beautiful space, which is the Vatican, and they recreated the Sistine Chapel, and you don't really feel that space. You don't really like inhabit it. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like it was lived there because most wide shots end like very quickly. You just cut to the shot reverse shot. It's just so predictable that after a while it's just like, okay, yeah, you're gonna cut when he says something significant about the plot. Now you're gonna cut to the reaction. Ugh, why? Because this space, the Vatican, it seems so predisposed to tableaus, to like long shots, to where you do the blocking a little more creatively. Where
Everything, the floor is beautiful, the walls are beautiful, and he has sometimes he has these overhead shots of people, overhead wide shots, so you reveal the tapestry of the floor and two people in one corner of the room. So okay, inherently beautiful, how to do it. But the fact also that doesn't excuse that you shouldn't be ambitious with your shots that in the way of expressing ideas. The only couple of moments where I felt there was a cross of the narrative ideas with the effort of visually expressing them that I found was beautiful was when he puts his name. There is almost this godly intervention from the explosion outside and how the real world crosses with the divine world, and then you have that beautiful shot of all the smoke and the debris coming in and him falling slow motion. That's quite potent. And then, of course, what that creates afterwards, it ceases to be a closed space. It becomes a place open, very literally. And so the wind comes in, it blows on the little leaflets that they have on their hands, but just before they vote. And take a moment to notice that. And I thought, oh, that's beautiful. That's an interesting, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing moment. But it's sensorial, So, but those are the very few moments where I felt that that we had a director working at the ideas.
I mean, doesn't that, at least from from someone that is directing the scene and taking the story in this direction, doesn't that kind of hint that in fact there's some sort of level where his conflict was with the choice that he wanted to make? Because I mean, the explosion happening at the moment that he puts his name in the pot, I mean, it's okay, it's totally on the nose, but I mean, it's definitely hinting that it's like God clashing with his decision. Okay, you put your name on, and now I'm not entirely happy with it. So there's definitely a hint that whatever he's going through has to do with the fact that what he wants and what he chooses to do in terms of the papacy. So for me at least, it's very melodramatic, very soap operish, but it's definitely hinting that the clash and his conflict has to do with the decision that he's making. Because, I mean, for Christ's sake, a bomb exploded at the moment that he put his name on it, so it doesn't get more obvious than that. And the look that he gives towards, the ceiling and then the picture. kind of hint at it as well.
Yeah, personally, I don't see that. Personally, I think it's like it's just aesthetically pleasing, so he decided to
Come
blow
on.
the bomb at that moment. Yeah, because
At
the
the
film,
moment that
it's like
when it
to a
chooses
degree,
to put his name, it's come on,
it does that because
it's
one, aesthetically
purposeful.
pleasing, and it's like it's purposeful, but it's nothing to do with him. Oh, you are ambitious, so I'm going to intervene so you don't become pope. It's like he
No, no,
puts
no, no.
that
I'm not saying
climatic
that.
explosion at the very end, just before they pick the right person, because Lawrence is not the obvious choice because he's not the one with ambition. We need to pass over the other elect obvious
But that's not
candidates
even the
until we
first
reach
explosion,
Lawrence.
though. That's not the first explosion. There had been before another explosion that vibrated the whole room.
But that doesn't intervene with the selection.
No, I'm just saying that it wasn't like the climax, the bomb. Like there was hints that there was something
Yeah, but
going
we were
on.
talking to an explosion that actually intervenes with it. It actually comments on the choices made, which is that one.
Right.
Almost has a commentary power, right?
And that's
So
exactly what I'm saying.
exactly,
It's
I do agree it has a commentary power, which is to say you are not the chosen one, my son. You are not still, the one yet. But it's just a matter of structure. Up until
oh,
then,
come on. I'm just saying it's commenting on the fact that his quail is clash inside that he keeps talking about, this crisis of faith, has to do with what he wants to do in terms of going back to some order, managing, or eventually becoming pope. There's clearly an indication that the conflict has to do with this, with what he wants to do. And in that sense, ambition because it's what he wants to do, what he wants to keep pursuing, so to speak. It seems clear that it's supposed to impact him some way, that it's hinting towards some internal clash of that character specifically, because it's him putting his name. So
I just think that his personal struggle to me gets a little bit diluted in the whole thing. For me, I don't think it's that personal. I don't think the film really succeeds in that. I think it's alluded to, but I don't feel it as much. You seem to feel a lot from it. I really don't feel as much. I feel like the faith in the church, I get it, because that is rejuvenated by the end. And what that light represents when it hits the light that comes from the window when the bomb comes, it's God saying, no, you're not the one, my son. Let's wait. Let's see what's the final result.
when we go to his room and we see him sitting down, contemplating, having all of these moments, why do we go to these moments? Why do we cut
That's
then?
because the director to me is not, it's not, his directing is not that interesting. Like
No, but it's
he
not
does
that
these things to
stupid. I
be
mean, come on.
somber and moody, and have the music going on
No, no,
and
but
be
I
like
think
overhead
if his
shots,
role,
him at the
if he
table,
really,
old age,
if
tired.
No, I'm saying that somebody wrote the script. You can't just say, "Oh, it's the director. He doesn't have idea." Like it's written into the
No, no,
script.
no,
Clearly, it
no.
has an
Of course, I'm
intention.
being unfair.
Yeah,
Yes,
in those
somebody.
moments,
I'm assuming he's
particularly,
the writer director, but there is a
yeah. I don't know
screenwriter
if
to
it
this, of
is.
course. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, those moments particularly, sure, you can say that they're not well framed or whatever, but they clearly feel like they have some intention behind whatever its struggles are.
No, I see the film striving for that, but what happens in those moments is a little bit empty for me. Like I see him in the bathroom having all that hurting opening his aftershave thing, and everything collapses, and then he says, "You're a manager, manage." And I feel like, is this so complicated to manage? Like, just manage the
Okay,
thing.
that's completely different, and I don't think it's
I'm
easy though.
like, just
Just the
manage the
comments, I don't think
thing.
it's easy.
No, it's not easy to manage, but it's like, are you so reluctant to manage? And you do it well. Like when you do it, you're actively seeking out things and talking with your little secretary. So
Okay, but
it's just
doing
like
it well doesn't
there's
mean he wants it.
no, but
It's just like the
not as much
papacy.
investigated. I just don't think it's as much investigated. The difficulty of doing it, and I just don't feel the weight of the difficulty of doing it. Outside of a couple of lines where he says, "I want to join the order," but he wanted me to be a manager, so I gotta do it. And then at the end, he's like, you follow him, he does his job well, and okay. I don't know what happens. Is he going to the order? Is he going to remain Hasadin? Maybe he's going to remain Hasadin. But it's like him as a character and personal journey. I'm like mix. To one degree, I feel there is a tie in the bow, so to speak, like his faith in the institution, in the church, the hope for it in this candidate that wins. That I actually feel is a very powerful character and a great actor. The one who plays the Cardinal Vicente or Benitez,
Inocentos. Não lembro.
who then becomes Inocencio, which I think is a very powerful presence, a great kind of choice, and I think he embodies it, and I think it's great in terms of the argument of the final argument of the film, that the church, there can be a purpose for it, for this old institution to be hope to certain people in an honest way, and that rejuvenates his faith in this church. Now, everything else, ambition, not ambition, wanting the papacy, not, I don't see those things as much explored. I don't see the difficulty, to one degree, is seen. He doesn't want his position. Fair. He has crisis of faith in believing in God. Okay, but I don't see the development of those ideas. It's like, I don't know, there need to be other pressures for me to believe he's battling the fucking job. I don't know. It's just, to me, I don't feel it becomes that much of a personal thing. It's much more of a plot-driven film of intrigue, of him finding from A to B to C, what did this guy do, what did he do, and oh my God,
yes,
so
of
much.
course it's an intrigue, but I don't know. Maybe it has to do with the weight of Verif's acting. It
I
just,
mean, he's a great actor, and that's
yeah,
why it's
but
part of
it's
the movie being solid.
but maybe that's okay. Maybe that's a conflict. He just acts too too well for the directing and the script. But I just felt more weight to his character than just a simple he's trying to figure out the dirt of everybody. I mean, I don't know.
I mean,
felt
obviously
more.
not. You know, obviously it's an intention. One thing is the intention. One thing is execution. For me, the intention of the film is clearly, as you say, to combine the personal with the greater scheme of trying to figure out the truth about these other characters and the plot. But then on execution, is it really that personal voyage? And do I feel like he changed as much as a character? I think he fails a bit by the end. You know, I don't feel like these. You know, were all the answers not answered, all the questions about him, all his doubts, all his, all
Yeah, I
to do
think
with
so
his
too. I mean,
you know, not answered per se, but developed, you know, constructed right, come to full circle, so to speak. Not to leave a solidified answer, but at times doesn't need to be necessarily that, but to feel like we got somewhere with it. I don't know. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I believe him. He's a great actor. He sells the character. I'm with him all the way because he's good.
Yeah, I thought it was fun to watch.
Fun to watch.
The priests just be like gossiping and be mean girls to each other.
yeah,
It's
it's a
alright,
fun
but
film.
yeah,
These
but I'll
guys
forget
were
it. It's a film that I will forget for sure.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna be thinking
Yes.
about it. It's there. It exists. And that's all for today, folks. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and website pages. Feel free to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. And if you're on YouTube and want to see more videos like this, check out this next video right here.
Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Bye bye.